Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with a very special YouTube video series, if you will. In this video, I will be uploading both the unedited version of this long process. We're going to level with a build from level 1 in a soul self-fund scenario from Act 1 to Act 10, and that will be up on YouTube. And we're also going to be uploading some TLDR recaps that I'll be recording after each act, which will also be on YouTube momentarily. I'm not sure which one of them you're watching right now, but that's the plan. This process is basically a play with me situation.
Wow.
Where we're going to be showing you guys a build and leveling that from the start up without any twink gear, and basically showing you guys how to level the build. And the build we're going to be playing is Absolution. It is the generic way you're leveling most witch summoner builds. So basically this video or the series that you're about to watch will be able to be used for basically any witch minion build ever throughout the acts. And then after the acts, you can change to whatever build you want to play. But in our case, I'm going to continue playing the actual minion build with Absolution and showing you guys after Act 10 the gear progression into low budget, as well as gear progression into medium budget with a build, an Atlas progression, as well as talk about some currency making farming strategies, and then moving that into a higher budget state. First things first, we're going to go through the acts and play through that, and I'll basically just walk you guys through the ideas and what I'm doing, and you can play side by side with this video if you want to. All right, so let's just dive into it. Right, so we're going to start with a low budget build guide for this. This build guide is available in the links in the descriptions below. That will show you the entire process that we're doing when it comes to playing the Absolution build. There's a low budget, medium, high, and mirror tier versions in that guide. The guide itself focuses on low budget as per usual, and I'll be showing you the low budget version. So this is the PUB that I'll be running on the side of my screen here, and be looking at that one as we go. Act 1 is going to basically be focused on getting our assets to level 12. At level 12, we'll be looking into getting Absolution and start playing with it. And I'm not going to go in with any special preparation with this, because I just wanted to do this to show you guys how you can do it by just having the PUB up and having generic understanding of the build and the game and play it by that. So basically the plan is at first to, well, get to town, right? If you are playing with a twink character, you can use things like Wanderlust, you can use things like Gold Rim, plus level of fist skill weapons, and you can use Tabula Rasa, and basically the links just means that you can just add more and more attack support gems that increase your damage output and whatnot. And that's about it. So basically what you want to do is loot everything. By looting everything allows you to sell them for fragments that you can use for basically anything else you want. So in this case, I can sell these items and I'll get some transmutation shards and scroll fragments, which is very important early on. Normally I want to look for a plus like a 3-link wand or something. I didn't get that here. Gem wise, I'll pick that up, but I always miss out and sometimes buy the wrong one, so I always check the right side first. Freezing pulse, we're going to use that, for example. We'll start with that instead of the fireball. So that is a really important note. There's a couple of different things you can do until level 12. One of the more popular ones is to run with the Stormblast Mine setup and Freezing Pulse. So in this case, I will just buy a different one. Actually, I think I had one. And do it like this. Goodbye. And then we just move out. All right, first things first. When it comes to Act 1 in here, there is no reason to kill anything in the coast. Reason for this is that this is a monster level 2 area. Even a blue pack is not worth killing, so all you want to do is just run around and dodge everything. So what's really important when you get to Act 2 is that instead of cold res rings that we wanted for Merveil, we now want to prioritize lightning resistance. The reason for this is because a lot of the content in Act 2, but also in Act 3, comes in the form of lightning damage. So we want to make sure that we start picking up lightning resistance rings. There's a couple of other things you can do in terms of damage output and whatnot, but I'll try to keep this as simple and baseline as possible. So the idea is for us in Act 2, but also in Act 3, is to look for resistance gear. And Act 3, we're also going to be looking in, or the later Act 2, we also want to look in for the idea of getting ourselves a 4-link eventually. And we're going to be getting some heralds, which will be in the herald purity, to give us a layer of defense. Not so much for damage, because Absolution already does a significant amount of damage and makes it smooth. So what we want to do is create layers of defense for us that will act by themselves, where we don't have to care. This is why we took up the quick recovery nodes for some extra mana regions. We don't have to think too much about mana being a problem for us. And eventually we're going to stop using We're going to stop using the Orb of Storms as well and just focus on keeping up a We're going to keep up with using a the Holy Flame Totem with Phantasm. We don't really need that later on either as well. But again, it's all about creating layers of defense for us, because Absolution has a tendency for us to not provide a lot of defense if we don't get minions summoned. Tree-wise, so far, we spec'd into Quick Recovery, then we picked up Enduring Bond, and then we went for Lord of the Dead to keep our minions alive. Next step right now is Strength and Dexterity being very important to keep track of, which is why we have a Heavy Belt and why we have Jade Amulets. We also want to make sure that we get in here to pick up Retribution, the HP nodes, as well as Sacrifice and Spiritual Command. After this, we will actually be going during Act 2 and 3 into the Purity of Flesh to get the minion damage nodes. Later on, you're going to have to respec out of those 2 nodes further down the road. That's one of the very few nodes that we're going to have to respec on. So again, Act 2, focus on getting the link sorted, get your Herald of Purity. That's why we're starting with the Chamber of Sins to get the Heralds, which will be Herald of Purity, and a Skitter Bot for more damage output, and look for lightning resistance approaches. All right, so now that we've reached Act 3, the process has been very simple. We have our Skitter Bots, we have our Herald of Purity, we drop the Vitality to ease up on mana, and we're running a 3-link Absolution with added lightning damage and minion damage support. We have Herald of Purity without support gems, and we do have the Race Zombie linked together with Summon Phantasms. This is going to be linked with Feeding Frenzy later to give ourselves, our minions, even more damage output. So that's a current stat that we did in Act 2. However, in Act 3, similar to Act 2, we want to focus on trying to see if we can either purchase or find ourselves another Topaz Ring, because a lot of damage in Act 3 from both Piety and Dominus, and both versions of Piety for that matter, allows you to be in a position where you want lightning resistances to make sure you don't die to that. Other than that, the main goal right now is actually looking for a 4-link. And later, when we get access to the library, we want to pick up Feeding Frenzy, but also Physical to Lightning support gem for our Absolution. At this point, you can actually start looking at the vendors, because the vendor can now start selling 4-linked items, which is something we definitely want to be looking into. So as you level up, just make sure that every time you're in town that you check that out. And we're just going to keep progressing. We will skip the lab with this version. It doesn't give us that much power. Mindless Aggression gives us a little bit of movement speed, 30% minion damage, and 10% cast attack speed. I don't feel that that is significant enough to stop and do the lab. You can if you want to. It's not bad to do. I have a tendency of skipping it, to just focusing on the axe and doing normal and cruel lab, which gives us unnatural strength, which is a huge damage increase. So again, what we're looking for is a 4-link, doing library quest, and focusing on getting lightning resistance, and that's the focus in the Act 3. And then we're going to see what happens in Act 4 moving forward. We're also going to pick up Convocation in Act 3. Now that we reached Act 4, we've killed everything. We do have access to some very specific rewards. First off, I didn't pick up the skill gem here. We also have the possibility of getting a Spell Echo because we killed Piety, which will replace our Added Cold in this case. Sorry, Added Lightning. So we'll pick up Spell Echo, which replaces Added Lightning. We can now delete that. We have the Golem. The only purpose, the things that we're going to be looking at now, we have the perfect setup for this right now, for the 4-link Absolution. Our next goal right now is to make sure that we keep track of our resistances as we move into Act 5. Because after Act 5 is over, we're going to lose resistances. This means we're going to start using bench crafts. For example, my gloves are terrible, but I found a pair of High Life with a Chaos Rest. Now, the Chaos Rest is useless, but it has an open suffix. This means I can start using bench crafts as long as I can afford it, which usually costs alterations or augments, and we're going to use those. The other thing we're going to start doing is that now that we've gotten a couple of more essences as we've been leveling, is to start going back to Act 1 every time we have a bunch of essences. And we can choose to run a shield instead of one of the wands. But the reason we go to Act 1 is because the wands we purchase from the vendor in Act 1 is the lowest item level of wands we can buy. And these wands have a high chance of giving us the access to plus level of lightning or plus level of physical. In this case, we didn't get it. I'll take the other one. I'll do this. And we didn't get it, so I'm just going to vendor both of them. Doesn't really matter. However, if you get resistances on any of those, you can actually use that instead of the other one that you have in here. So I could actually essentially use one of these. There's a little bit of mana, cold damage spells, doesn't really matter. Attack speed, doesn't matter. So I can literally just do this and just move them over. If you find something with resistances, that's not a bad thing to do. This is a level 9 one, we don't want that. And this is the item level 13. So it's an effective way to have an increased chance for you to get plus level of lightning or plus level of physical skills, which is basically the only offensive scaling you can do at this early stage of the game. Tree-wise, I feel like I'm pretty tanky, but in Act 5, we're going to need a bit more HP. That's why I've taken these nodes down here, and now I have two choices. I can pick up the damage, which I will because I have pretty decent gear. Otherwise, I would have rushed all the way down to this side to pick up Cruel Preparation. So I'll take these 3 nodes, go for Cruel Preparation. I will also be looking into taking these 2 nodes. So I'll start with these 3, and I'll take those 2. So those are the 5 first nodes I'll be picking up. And then I'll route over to Cruel Prep for resistances. And then we're going to keep moving on the right-hand side to get the other nodes that we're looking for with the build to avoid having a bunch of respecs. It does make us a little bit squishy than we need to, but it is the generic approach that we're going to be running with. I have 2 more chromatics. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm actually going to do some chromatics and see if I can get a green socket. I didn't. So we're just going to do this then. Outside of that, in Act 5, we're just going to look for resistances. We're also going to be using our transmutation orbs to make sure that we roll on any decent life flask, trying to get a bleed removal as well as an instant life flask. Those are the main purposes and usage of our transmutation orbs, and that's how we're going to be playing it right now. I think I'm going to start with that, actually. So that's the plan for the current state of the game. So we're just going to move on and move forward. Now we have reached Act 6. The things that you need to focus on in Act 6 is very specific. Resistances, resistances, resistances. That's all you need to give a shit about. We have started in the previous act to use the cheap benchcraft as long as you got some transmutation orbs. That's very important. You can even benchcraft HP if need be. For example, on this piece here, I do have a suffix open. I can get a little bit more rest here if I need to. Make sure you have a heavy belt. Make sure you have a jade amulet to make sure you get the dexterity and your strength requirements up. I don't have a green socket for my desecrate still, so that's not very good. However, we did get a plus level lightning skills shield, which is actually very good with a good chunk of life. There is a suffix open. I can benchcraft resistances on this, because as you kill Kitava in Act 5, I've now lost resistances. So the first thing first, I'll go to my hideout and I will benchcraft cold rest on my shield to fix that problem. As you not drop chromatics, I've actually used the chromatics already. So I'll do this. I go to rest, cold rest, the cheap one for 1 alt transmutation. Where did I put my transmutation? I thought I had one. Either way, if you at any given time end up in a situation where your resistances are terrible or you're dying a lot because of your problem with resistances, what you want to do then is drop Herald of Purity, and instead of Herald of Purity, you would run with Purity of Elements. This will cover all your resistance problems, but it also removes a layer of defensive minions for you. So that's basically the strategy of sorting your elemental resistances. And that's literally all you need to think about throughout the entirety of Act 6, the entirety of Act 7, 8, 9. Moving forward, from this point on forward, you want to be as close or at the cap of your elemental resistances. As long as you're there, your defense will be fine. When it comes to your tree, what you want to focus on is if you feel that you're tanky, focus on damage nodes. If you feel that you need HP or that you're squishy, focus on life nodes. That's all you got to do. In our case, I'm skipping Death Attunement right now, and I'm going to go all the way into Cruel Preparation for life and resistances. Once I'm done with this, I'll take these nodes for the extra zombie and as well as extra damage. And the next steps after that will be to move into the right-hand side. If I need life, I'll go all the way down to the Written in Blood. If I'm feeling good and I want to reserve my auras for more damage, I would actually go pick up the aura reservation nodes and then pick up the Eldritch Battery as well as this node to sustain myself with Eldritch Battery. And then after that, we can also look into the Ravenous Sword. It all depends on how I feel. There's no really a written set in stone set that you should go for. It's all up to you how you want to play it. Socket-wise, gem-wise, there's nothing really changing outside of the fact that I can, if I want to, go for a lightning penetration. But I don't think it's worth it with this setup. We're just going to play it the way it is, and that's it. We're basically going to run with what we have throughout the remaining acts. So these ELDR recaps that I'm doing every act is going to be a bit shorter from here on out. All right, let's move into the acts. All right, we have just finished Act 6, and we're in Act 7. The strategy is literally the same as before. If you panic with resistances, remove Herald of Purity, grab the Purity of Elements. In my case, I'm pretty okay on resistance. A little bit bad on lightning, so I'll just be looking for items that sorts this. The other thing we'll be looking for during Act 7 is actually more dexterity, because the tree doesn't allow me to put in a plus 30 dexterity at the moment. So I'll be trying to get that in other sources. For example, a better amulet. If I have some benchcraft options like I have on the shield, I'll benchcraft dexterity. So I'll try to focus on that aspect a lot. And just getting the resistance sorted. And if I ever at any time need to panic on it, I can just put a Herald of Purity, taking away that one and adding Purity elements and benchcrafting dexterity wherever I can. and the problem is solved. So that's basically what we'll be doing during Act 7. Other than that, we're not really looking for anything specific. We're just going to progress. When we're done with Act 7, that's when we're going to eyeball the first 2 labs. So let's just kick into it. All right, boys, we have now reached Act 8, and the same thing as Act 7. The only thing we want to prioritize is sorting our resistances and keeping our dexterity at a good pace. We are most likely going to enter some problems in Act 8 with dexterity as our desecrate levels up. Sorry, our Sierra bot levels up, and we don't need to level the desecrate, but I still don't have a green socket. I do have 2 chromatics, so I could try to squeeze out a green socket just like that, actually. Nice. So now we have desecrate again, so that's really good. Outside of this, just focus on getting the resistances up, focus on getting your life up. Tree-wise, depends. I'm at a point where my life is good, my rest is good, my damage is good. I can spec whatever I want, which is why I've taken the opportunity to do this entire traveling. And I'm going to keep doing the traveling all the way to these life nodes. So I'm going to take those nodes right there. And now we have aura nodes here, aura nodes here. We also have a jewel node here, and jewel node here. We don't have any jewels right now. We also have the approach to going with the Eldritch Battery with the Energy Leech nodes. Those 2 will have to be at the same time, more or less. However, or at least you're going to start with the small one. I don't really have that much energy shield, so I'm going to hold off on that for now. And so basically, the priority I have right now is either auras or the extra damage nodes in zombie right here. So that's basically the scenario I'm in on the tree. And if I still feel that that's fine after I've gotten those damage nodes and I don't feel the need for the auras, I will actually take the travel nodes down here to get some regen, but most importantly, the extra life nodes. So again, the recap for the next act we're going to do in Act 8. Resistances, attributes, and just play the tree depending on how I feel with the gear. There's no right or wrong in here. Just go whatever we feel like. And my gear is feeling so good at the moment that I'm just going to take the travel nodes first, so I don't end up in a problematic situation later. But if I do, then I'll have more options because I've already taken the travel nodes. So it's very likely that I'll just start working my way ass down here now instead of the damage, and we'll see how that feels. And that's about it. And we're closing in on the end of this this playthrough. Let's crack into Act 8 then. So we have just reached Act 9, chilling as we progress. The few things in Act 9 that we're going to think about is the exact same thing as Act 6, 7, 8, 9, and also the same in Act 10. Resistances, fix your attributes, and just keep going. At this point, now we reach the level where I'm not going to use my currency that much. I will, however, try to use transmutations as well as chance orbs on the Divine Flask now that I'm level 60 soon. We're currently level 58. So I'll be using that currency on Flask, but however, I always make sure that I have currency to use on Benchcrafts if I need to upgrade my gear. The other thing we'll be doing is that I've reached the point where I should have no problems running Cruel Lab, smooth and easy, but most importantly, fast. And the reason I wait this long is because I want to make sure that I never have a chance of dying in there. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Lab from Normal Lab and Cruel Lab, and those nodes will be very simple. We're going to start with picking up the minus aggression and then into unnatural strength. We'll ramp up our damage significantly. And then once we've done that, we're going to finish powering through Act 9. Since we can clear so much, even up to yellow tier maps using a freaking 4-link, I'm just going to run into maps as soon as we're done with all the acts. So we're going to ascend, finish Act 9, and we're going to finish Act 10, and then we're going to do maps with this build. All right, so we're going to go into Act ascending right now. We have just reached Act 10, and we have ascended, which we did before we started Act 9. And it's the same thing ever since Act 6. It's just checking stats, just checking resistances, and doing the same thing again. Get your minions sorted and aggressively convocate. That's all there is to it. There is nothing that changes. And it's the same type of playstyle when we are done with the acts to do this. Exactly the same playstyle. There's no changes. You just get your minions out and you convocate aggressively and you go ham. And basically the next progression is to look at going from your act leveling gear to low budget gearing. So a quick run through for my gear. This is my weapon. It's an item level 13. This is my helmet, item level 26, item level 45, item level 42, 14, 42, 38, 57, and 45. It's like, actually item level 32, sorry. It's like the gear I have is mostly from the mid-range acts. Some pieces are even from Act 2 still that I'm using because I don't need them. And if I ever needed resistances, I could always drop away the Herald of Purity and run Purity of Elements instead. And that would make it easier for me to actually focus on gear pieces that had more HP. Because the only thing bad right now is my lightning rest is not capped and my life is a little bit low for where I'm at. I even didn't stop the level in Blood Aqueducts So I'm level 61 in a level 64 area, and we're just steamrolling through the content. And you can do this because you're playing softcore, and therefore it's okay to die. And I haven't died in a long time. I only died a few times in the early stage, right? Playing a bit recklessly, but we haven't focused on pushing and going super fast. We've been showing you guys a smooth and comfortable way of playing the game where you don't have to stress, and it's just going to carry you all the way. And this is how you level any minion build that is a witch in the current state of the game. All right, I'm just going to go through this, and we'll be back with a final outro when I'm done with the Act 10. Catch you then. Okay, the last one. All right, so 5 hours, 7 minutes, chill run without pushing, super smooth. This is how you level a summoner build as a witch in the game from Act 1 to Act 10 Kitava. Most of our gear comes from Act 4, 5, 6, 7. That's where the most of our gear comes from. So basically, this TLDR recap that you might be watching, there's going to be a link in the description below to the full playthrough if you want to check that out. And basically, the next progression from here is that we're just going to go into mapping. And once we start mapping, the process is that we're going to be starting up with showing you guys how to gear progress from where you are now into your low budget set. And the first important thing is the 6-link, which we're going to go for a Tabula Rasa. You have two options there, like going for something like farming the cards in Blood Aqueducts. We have access to unique items from the Arch Nemesis. That's actually very easy to farm in the lower level areas on a lower level character. So you can actually very easily do that as well if you want to force out a Tabulas, and they're pretty cheap now as well. So basically, I will be playing with a Tabula in the next session. And I'm going to show you the progression of your character in a super low budget state. And we're going to talk about the certain items you want to upgrade to get the build running into the early, mid-range, and the early high tier maps as well, such as nibbling on the red tier maps, which does include the idea of getting watchstones. Now, the watchstones you get from certain specific in-game fights, right? So I'm going to talk about how you can get the build up to the point where they can handle those fights. And we're also going to be talking about currency making strategies with the build in this specific state. And then after that, we'll talk about the gear progression once you've started going into currency making farms, into making the build going from low budget into an actual medium budget state as well. So hope you guys stay tuned for that. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe for more content. And I hope you guys enjoyed this little project of ours that we're doing the entire play with me session, if you want to, whatever you want to call it. Anyways, till next time, as always, stay safe, keep rocking.